The world we live in today is a world where money matters. But if we have to become too dependent on other countries for resources that are easily acquirable, that keeps our country alive and well, money means nothing. We should prioritize all the money that we spend on cash crops, on resources that we need. We have a 5-pronged policy on the side of opening government. The first, we should disallow and disband all agricultural research on cash crops. The second, we would also disallow farmers from planting cash crops. Thirdly, we would also heavily fine, and if they do not comply within 6 months, they will be put in jail if they do plant cash crops. We would also compensate for their losses, so if they can plant new crops in the future. And the 5th prong is that we would fund them and subsidize their research, like what we did with cash crops in status quo, so they will be able, for other sectors such as food and medicine. I have 2 arguments for you in the side in the PM. The first, how our country is becoming too dependent and why that's bad. And secondly, how our policy ensures a better agricultural system is independent and beneficial for our country. So let's move on into the first argument. So how are our country becoming too dependent and something that is bad? 3 levels to this. The first, how does our agricultural industry look? How does our current agricultural system look like? Secondly, is the amount of money we are gaining profitable? And the 3rd level, is it bad being dependent? So let's move on into the first level. How does our agricultural system, how does our agricultural industry look like today? Not a lot of money is put into it because we are quite dependent on cash crops for money, because that's our natural resource, and that's a natural resource that people can see. But we feel that Malaysia is putting too much money and too much love into that sector, and it's something that is bad. So we feel that a lot in our current industry, a lot of that money is focused on cash crops and not focus on anything else like food or medicine, all those other important things that we export from other countries. So we feel that's something that's bad. So what happens now is that since we are importing a lot of things and the only thing that we are exporting is cash crops, is that now we don't have a lot of money. A lot of sectors don't have a lot of money put into them because a lot of their money is basically put into cash crops. Meaning all those other type of researchers don't have good research because they don't have enough funding into them. They won't be able to make beneficial products for our country because they have less funding, and basically they won't be able to make quality research. So let's move on into the second level. Is the amount of money we're getting profitable? Have a seat. Since our general budget is based around cash crops, it means other industries have very low funding. And what that means is that we become too dependent on other countries for certain type of resources like food and medicine. And what ends up happening is that we are often unprofitable whatsoever because we aren't getting enough, because we are spending too much money on those other things that are easily acquirable and easily made if you just put enough money into them. What happens now, and why this is important, is that we don't get good profit. What happens now is that you just create this industry that has a lot of research, has a lot of funding into it, but won't be able to get the amount of profit you would like. We feel that the prioritization Malaysia has right now isn't very justifiable because you don't get a lot of profit from these other countries because you have to export a lot of things from those other countries, meaning your profit is basically useless and isn't very needed. We feel that prioritization of things like food and medicine is something that's worth, because when you go to the supermarket, you normally look for carrots from New Zealand, you normally look for potatoes from Ireland, because those type of resources are trusted. The Malaysian agriculture industry isn't very trusted in that, and therefore people just spend money on imported food, and therefore you gain that tax and people have to pay more for it, and therefore it just becomes less profitable for Malaysia and becomes less profitable for the state because it's spending too much money on certain type of things like that. So what happens now is that it just doesn't become generally profitable for the state or just that for that industry whatsoever, because we are spending too much money on too many things and we aren't trying to minimize that type of harm inequality. And thirdly, is it bad that we are being this dependent? If it means spending money if it means spending money from all of our profits on things that can be easily obtainable, things that can be easily made, we feel that is something that is something that is that bad independent, and something that's truly horrible, because now you're forcing our country to be in that certain type of box where they have to be dependent on these countries, where you're putting too much money in agriculture, and therefore other countries can exploit it for instance, because now that we don't have any type of good resources and not a lot of money is put into certain type of sectors, a lot of countries can exploit this for cash crops, meaning if we do want certain type of resources like food, things like other countries like New Zealand can gain cash crops instead of money, because we don't have a lot of money, we have a lot of cash crops, meaning they are exploiting us for our cash crops, and therefore we aren't the best amount of resources and we're not getting the best amount of things for our country. So things like being dependent on other countries is something that's bad, because we're getting exploited for our cash crops and we're not getting any type of money whatsoever for that. So moving on into the second argument, how does our policy ensure an agricultural system that is beneficial for our country? We feel that having an agricultural system in general is something that's beneficial, because now we don't have to depend on certain type of other countries for resources like food and medicine, which means that certain type of resources will become much more cheaper. Things like healthcare will be much more accessible if you put more money into the type of sector. Things like food will become much more accessible to the poor because it's much more accessible since because it's not imported and therefore it's less expensive, meaning that things like that is something that's beneficial for our country and just beneficial for our state in general, because they can make much more profit if they just had if they made an agricultural industry that can work. So we feel that's something that's good. So if you want a world where we are dependent on resources of other countries and therefore we exploit it because we are too dependent and we don't have any type of resources to be able to have our country in a stable life, we feel you should just go with the side of opposition, because that's the side that doesn't allow you to have a stable country and a country that's just too dependent on other countries and therefore it isn't functional.
So without further ado, let's call on opposition leader to speak.
Madam Chair, I believe both sides can agree that cash crops are in our status quo a vital part of our economy. Right. Before I move on with my points, I'd like to direct some rebuttals to the Prime Minister's speech. Right. First of all, he was talking about how dependency on other countries is bad, right? And then he was talking about how like if you're too dependent on other countries, your country becomes stable, right? We believe that this is not the case because in status quo, we are increasingly becoming more and more globalized, which means that we can rely on each other, right? With the United Nations and so on, right? And even the World Trade Organization, it is very unlikely that any country would like stop sending us their cash crops, right? And even if they do so, that since it is a very globalized economy, right? And since we do have the resources needed, we do have the money needed, we do have the purchasing power needed, we can still acquire the cash crops which we need from other countries, right? Because in status quo, let's take for example Singapore. Singapore does not have any cash crops, but with her wealth, with the amount of her wealth, regardless of the world economy, she can still afford to buy crops from other countries, right? And okay, that's and okay, as for my next rebuttal, right, he was also talking about how food and medicine will become cheaper. Okay, yes, we do concede to the fact that if you plant food and if you don't plant cash crops and you instead plant crops which you can consume, food prices are going to drop, right? But we ask you this, right? You tell us that food prices are going to drop, but are you aware of how important cash crops such as palm oil are important to our economy? And because of these cash crops such as palm oil, we are being able to subsidize our country heavily in terms of, for example, oil in our country is very much heavily subsidized, right? Okay, moving on to my first point, right? That side clearly neglects the economic impacts of phasing out these cash crops, right? First of all, their time period for phasing out these cash crops is just 6 months, you know. So like within the 6 months, they expect like the whole Malaysian market to get adapted to gradually, like within 6 months, we have to get adapted and we have to accept that we can no longer have cash crops in our country, right? Because they tell us that they are going to ban it and they will find them. Okay, right. What we tell you is that even for the implementation of GST, right, they had to take so long, you know, even though it was just a simple tax, it was just a replacement of another tax. We tell you that this time period is insufficient, and if you were to do it in this time period, it's going to cause a lot of trouble, right? Okay, continuing with my economic importance point, right? You see, we are very much reliant on cash crops for our economy, which I think both sides can agree with. But okay, even if we were to phase out these cash crops and instead go with agricultural crops, right? We are one of the largest producers in the country. What is just going to happen is that if we stop producing cash crops, other countries will produce cash crops, and now it will become more profitable for them to do so because we've just lost like a huge amount of supply in the economy. So what will happen is other countries will capitalize on it and they would indeed become richer than us. And instead, in those countries, the cash crops would be even more neglected. So we believe that their proposal is actually self-defeating. Yes, on that.
The globalization we have in the status quo because the dependency of other countries. If one of those countries cut ties with us or makes those ties much more narrow, what are we supposed to do now?
Exactly. Okay, if another country cuts its ties with us, it's just a country. In this world, we've got so many countries, and we could have still rely on other countries, right? Because as long as we have money, other countries will be supplying their crops to us, right? Because this happening is very unlikely, and even if it does, okay, yeah, I believe I've answered that, right? So, okay, moving on with my economic point, right? They don't give us a very clear, except for they say that, okay, they're going to phase it out and they'll fine farmers, but they refuse to acknowledge that our country has many palm oil refinery services, right? So what will happen if you phase out these cash crops? What are going to happen to all those investments which we have put into cash crops so long all this time, right? What is going to happen to that? That was nothing from the Prime Minister's speech spoke about that, right? Okay, so and all these investments which we have done before, especially on palm oil and rubber, which have been a very essential and core part of our economy, is just going to go into thin air, because you know why? They're just going to ban it. And yeah, so, and they're altered. Okay, let's face it, in status quo, why do people choose to plant cash crops over other crops? It's because they're simply more profitable. Because people are not dumb, you know, they would only choose to plant cash crops because it's much more profitable. And even if they were to talk that that the food and medicine price will become cheaper, we tell you that if they lose their source of income, if they lose their source of livelihood, because the majority of those who rely on agriculture in our country rely on cash crops, right? This is not, we believe that this cannot be a trade-off, because even though the food and medicine prices, according to them, will become cheaper, they would still lose of their income, right? Okay, and as for my last point, right, they also did not give us a clear definition of how they are going to phase out these cash crops, right? They just said they will ban anyone who are planting it after 6 months, right? Okay, what we see the problem with this is 6 months is a very short time period. So within this time period, you are saying that what you're going to do is you're just going to ban them. Okay, so what happens to all the palm oil and rubber trees in our country? How are you going to get rid of them? Okay, since they seem to be concerned about the price of stuff, and then yeah, since they seem to be concerned about the price of goods and services, we assume that currently the most popular way of getting rid of these trees are to just burn them, right? And this, as everyone here would acknowledge, will cause us immense harm, right? And even if they were to argue, okay, no, we are not going to burn down trees, right? What's going to happen is they're going to go and chop off these trees like one by one, which is very time consuming. The main reason why people choose to burn trees instead, right? So if you're claiming that, you're claiming that they did not give us a clear explanation for that, and instead we think that even if you were to chop down trees one by one, it's a very time-consuming one, and it's not worth it. It's not worth the cost, right? And with this, I'm proud to rest my case.
The point in which we have to depend on a country that exploits our economy, you undermine our country's economy, and you make our country lose out on all those benefits. I have to clarify one thing from the side opening government, which is more important, cash crops or food crops. We think that the country solely bases or solely relies on food crops because it is basically your necessity to survive. I think it's very important that this important thing that opposition failed to see is that we cannot survive without food crops, but we can survive without cash crops. I have two arguments for you today. Firstly, how a country loses out when we sell cash crops and buy food crops, and secondly, how cash crops don't grow the economy. But before that, three rebuttals in form of questions. Firstly, are we being independent as a country? And secondly, can farmers or individuals cope with the changes we're trying to make? And third of all, what happens if a country cuts ties with us? Firstly, are we being independent? We think that as a country, no, we are not being independent because we're extremely dependent on other countries. We sell oil to other countries, and we sell plenty of cash crops to other countries. In fact, we sell plenty of rubber to different countries. But we think that the problem there is that we also buy a lot of our produce from other countries. Example, we buy carrots from China and Australia, and buy our potatoes from Ireland. And we think that this makes us extremely dependent because our whole country's agriculture system doesn't actually benefit farmers who want to plant food crops, but prioritizes cash crops. I think that's very horrible of the system, and we think that side opening government is the only way to fix the system. And the second rebuttal in form of questions. Can individuals cope? We think that the harm that side opposition push on us is that people can't cope. And we think we already proved that our policy ensures that they can cope with losses and they can, as much as possible, be able to be done by those 6 months. And they also push another burden on the environment, but we think that burden is not our burden to prove because this is has got nothing to do with debate. If the environment gets messed up, it doesn't matter. At the point, our objective is to ensure that as much as possible, our country economy grows, not the environment. And third of all, what happens if a country cuts ties with us? We think they came out those that it's not likely to happen, but we think that there's no comparative there, and we think that losing China, losing Australia, and US is extremely important to our food industry because we solely based on these countries to ensure that our country, everyone in our country has enough to eat, because our agriculture system doesn't ensure that we have enough food crop to sustain on our own. Now to my arguments. My first argument, how a country loses out when we sell cash crop and buy food from other countries. It's very easy to say that our country is not losing anything when we buy and sell because it all makes up, right? But we think that that's not true, and I'll prove it in two levels. Firstly, how the money we gain doesn't equate to the money we spend, and secondly, how we lose out in exchange rates. But first of all, how the money we gain doesn't equate to the money we spend. We think that countries that purchase our cash crop don't solely depend on our country. They merely see which country's crop is cheaper, because we have competition such as Indonesia, and we think that it's very easy for countries to pick and choose what they want based on price. And therefore, we think that the money we earn annually is fairly arbitrary, and we don't have a staple income, because I already proved to you that countries don't buy based on support, but they buy purely on price, because we tell you a lot of these countries are money-minded and want to get the cheapest prices they get. And this means that we don't have a stable income, but we tell that when we flip this around, the comparative is that when we have food crops, we tell that the food crop industry is really big, because a lot of countries solely rely on their cash crop economy, and we tell that we have so much competition already. And we tell that it's also very easy for us to be exploited, because we have to survive on other countries. This means that if Australia doesn't want to sell us carrots, and we have to offer a high price, for it, and if they take it, we are very easily exploited, because we solely depend on such countries to get our food crop and to survive. And secondly, how we lose out on exchange rate. Sure, maybe you may say that to some extent our income is stable, and that maybe to some extent we manage to balance it out on both sides, but then you still lose out on exchange rate, because Malaysia's economy isn't really good, and we thought that side opening government can in fact fix this, because if it means that we have enough food crop to sustain our country, and we therefore don't have we can in fact contribute to the economy, to the international economy, and it means that we would benefit from it. The second argument, how cash crop doesn't grow economy. Without a status quo, a lot of countries are relying on the industry. Sure.
If you said that our country do solely depend on imports from other countries, but how about farmers who plant rice? How about farmers in the Cameron Highlands who do supply us with lots of food?
I don't see any problem in that, right? Because the thing is that sure that some people do provide us with food, but the problem there is there are not enough people providing us with food. I understand that sure there are some individuals who plant food crops, but I tell that the comparative is that there's not enough food crop. The problem is not that the problem is the lack of food crop, not whether there is food crop or not, and you fail to see that problem. In status quo, a lot of countries are relying their industry on cash crop, and this means that our country has a lot of competition. And what this means is that we have to sell these crops as cheap as possible. And what's the problem there, you see? The problem there is we have to negotiate the cheapest price we can get to ensure that the countries buy as much from us. And without that, what happens is that it's quite unlikely that we manage to sell to most countries, because a lot of other countries don't necessarily can sell it cheaper because they have more labor work. But without that, even if we do manage to sell it, we don't make much money, because we believe that a comparative then becomes a world with food crop, which is where status quo, where there's a high demand of food crop, and it means that people are willing to pay more for food crop. And we tell that if we can focus on this food crop, we can increase the economy of the country and ensure that our country doesn't become solely dependent on such countries. And we think that what happens then is that when we think that side opening government isn't asking, we're not telling you that we don't need food crop, but we think that this debate is more of the priority on which we should depend our economy on, because we tell that a lot of countries already compete for the prices of cash crop. And we tell the side opening government is the only side that ensures our country is independent and can depend without other countries.
Dear members of the floor, side opening government has been inconsistent throughout this entire debate and have been contradicting themselves for more than once. Now, first of all, Prime Minister from opening government came up to you and said that their policy is going to disallow, fine, jail, and ban cash crops. But then, Deputy Prime Minister says that they do not want to entirely ban it, but just want to prioritize on food crops. Now, why are you contradicting each other? Also, let's follow the lead from Prime Minister then. How would you feel if you were a farmer that was planting cash crops for your entire life and suddenly someone banned you to do so, jailed you to do so, and fined you to do so? You had no freedom of choice. You were forced to do something like this. How would you feel? What happens if all these policies were implemented and farmers decide to have industrial action? What if they decide to strike? Then the country will go into an economic stall. We walk into a recession and we can never recover from it. Now, one thing that I really want to point out from DPM, sit down. One point that I would like to rebut from DPM is that he says the environment is not relevant. Yeah. That is absolutely bullshit. Here, we think that not only the environmental issue is not only relevant, it's imperative to today's debate. You see, environmental issues nowadays are very, very talked about because we have to consider what happens in the long run. We need to think about a sustainable economy. See, the Paris Trade Agreement had more than 150 countries signing up for it, and they say that it's not important. Excuse me? Now,
on that point.
Sure.
Okay, we live in a world where money is something that's very important. When we use all our money on resources such as food and not using it to benefit our economy and then our exchange rate becomes something more expensive, why is that better?
Now, let me move on into my, cover my points. I'll respond to that later. Now, one of the things that also they mentioned, which has a huge logic gap that I do not understand, is that they say dependence causes unprofitability in the economy. What, like, where does that come from? You just jump from one place to another. Also, how they mention where, okay, I understand. Food is a very important resource for human beings. We eat it every day. Of course, it's important. But then we can import it from other countries, right? Okay, they say that if one country cut ties with you because they don't want to work with you or there's some sort of disagreement, well, fine, be that then. There's 206 countries in this entire world, and we're Malaysia. We have good bonds with every other country. We're good friends with everyone. If one country doesn't want to be friends with us, we have another country to back us up. We're not North Korea, guys. Really. Now, if you're North Korea and you have one, you broke up with one friend, then of course you're not going to get any help from anyone because you only have one friend. But we have many other good bonds with everyone: the US, the Australia, the China. And even if you break bonds with us, that means your supply will increase, and then you will get more profit from it. Now. Yeah, sure.
So if you care about the environment, doesn't your cash crop destroy your environment in the long run as you need to refine and reproduce items?
Now, okay, let me give you an example of a cash crop then. Rubber estates, okay? Rubber estates can be cut off and we literally just cut their branch and then we get the rubber, and it literally reproduces just every season. For cash crops, you have to either burn it or you have to replow everything. That's much more environmental problematic to us because it causes deforestation. See, rubber estates are very much sustainable throughout many decades because we do not have to cut them off. They just reproduce many times in their lifespan. Now, moving on to my points. Okay, we see that phasing out is a very, very horrible strategy. Phasing out cash crops is a horrible strategy because we are newly industrializing economy, guys. We're not a less developed country. We're rapidly increasing, and to achieve that goal, we should just continue on our tracks right now. Because other countries mass produce food crops already, like Thailand, we have Taiwan. Do you really want to go up with those big boys and want to pick up a fight when you're literally just starting over? That damages our economy greatly. Now, also regarding that, let's say another country such as Thailand and Taiwan, they have many years of experience on planting food crops, so they have much more better technology and information about that. But our lack of expertise may cause our infant industry, if you sit down, you have caused enough damage to the debate. Now, you see, the thing is, if you if you change to food crops suddenly and then you have lack of activities compared to other countries, you may cause the infant industry to collapse entirely, and that would cause huge damage to the country's economy, and the government will have to spend so much money to save you. And that, sit down, you cause enough damage, please. Now, that literally reestablishes the point where in 2007 and 2008, where the estate bubble, the government decided to pump money to save the industry, and see what happened in that. We had a global economic crisis. Now, also, I would like, so they keep saying how changing to food crops is much better profit, but they never give us numbers or anything, or any examples. So let me give you some examples, shall we? See, Cameron Highlands, sit down, will you? Okay, Cameron Highlands and Sekinjang, okay? Sekinjang was originally started as an agricultural place for paddy fields, and for Cameron Highlands, we have strawberry fields. See, the thing is, they started off well, but then they realized they couldn't compete with the big boys. So what do? You change it into a tourist industry. Really, you had no choice. I mean, you can't change from that. So we can see very clearly how changing into food crops is not beneficial for Malaysia. It's much better to stick with cash crops. But from the examples that you can see from Sekinjang and also Cameron Highlands. Now, also a part of cash crop is also a part of Malaysia's spirit identity. If you change from cash crops to food crops, you're not going to be able to compete. Like, you're not gonna, because Malaysia right now is like the top few countries that produces rubber estate and oil palms. So you have a Malaysian pride. What do you first come to mind when you think about Malaysia, except for food, of course? You think about oil palms and rubber estates. But if you change to food crops, who would ever think about Malaysia in the future, right? That's a part of our national identity, and we should promote that, because that helps us motivate us as a country. And with that, I'm proud to propose. Go ahead, government.
Thank you for that speech. Now I invite
Madam Speaker, to start off the debate, I would like to clarify what this debate is all about. So this debate is all about whether we should remove this production of crops, of cash crops that we don't eat, that we don't consume, and which side gives more benefits to it. And I will explain further more in my speech later on. So first of all, characterization. So what is phase out? So phase out meaning to remove the cash crops gradually, right? So remove the cash crops. When we remove the cash crops gradually, meaning it doesn't really bring as much impact toward the economy of Malaysia. So meaning if we remove these cash crops, they don't give as much as difference to the economy of Malaysia. They don't really decrease the economy of Malaysia, right? So second of all, cash crops. Cash crops are the production we use to get in. We consider the fact that cash crops, we need cash crops in our country because the production of it we use to sell and to get income from it. So so the problem in today's debate is that how number of cash crops is more than the number of the problem in today's status quo is that the number of cash crops we need in our country is more than the number of cash crops we need is more than the number of food crops that we actually need because it's part of our basic needs, right, Madam Speaker? So what's the Malaysian role in agriculture is that we export a lot of cash crops to other countries, right? And it gives us profit. We concede to the fact, to that. But we believe that on the outside, we would like to cater more on having more food crops because they are more important at the end of the day. So before I move on to my arguments, I would like to rebut on the what has the opposition side came out and say. So they came out and say that we can only rely to other countries, meaning we import resources from other countries, right? And the government bench already mentioned already been telling you that on how are you so sure that the relationships between the two countries are perfect all the time? So their response to that is just the only response among one country. But then under our side, to extend that, I would like to extend that once this happened, the impact from the sanction, the vetoing from other countries to our country will then affect on other countries as well. So meaning to say, when this sanction happens, meaning to say when this sanction happens only, let's say only between Malaysia and Thailand, it will eventually affect on other countries as well. And at the end of the day, we'll get less support from other countries. We'll cut down relations furthermore. Sit down. So our policies for today is that we would like to gradually decrease the production of cash crops and focus more on the agriculture that gives the production of food, right, Madam Speaker? So moving on to my extensions. Okay, so the first extension is how Malaysians should focus more on food crop rather than cash crop. Why is this so? Two level of analysis is that how import and export of food crops import and export of food crops has a larger scale than the cash crops, right? Two reasons for this. First of all, we all know that food is a basic part of our basic need, and we need this food, and it's very important to go on our we need food in our life, and the other crops are just our extra needs. But we concede to the fact that we also concede to the fact that we need this for like in our technologies and such. We believe that under our side, we would like to cater more on food crops rather than this cash crop. Second reason is how human being needs more food, because food is important, and because food is more important than that, right? So second level of analysis, no. The state second level of analysis is how the state catering to the welfare of the society, right? So we know that the role of the government in Malaysia is to cater to the welfare of society. So in which, in any circumstances, in any problems at all that we Malaysians facing right now, the dominant in which, in any circumstances at all, the government should prioritize. The government are prioritizing the food. The food needs first. No, sit down. Food needs first. They will eventually fight. They will fight for food resource at the end of the day. So why is it so? First of all, government spent less money to import food from outside. Instead, they use the money for other they use the money from importing food from outside. Instead, they use the money for the betterment of other sectors needed in our country, right? Second of all, on how resource money that we use to save for importing stuff is that we gain importing stuff is basically more than the money we save to more money we gain from exporting our resource to other countries, right? So moving on to my second extension is on how the government side benefits the poor people, right? Because in status quo, local products are cheaper, so we don't need to import. So meaning to say, when the local products are cheaper, meaning to say we don't need to import resources from other countries, and this will therefore benefit and help the poor people to buy this resource, because they can't afford the import stuff because of their high price. And second of all, the poor people is the main stakeholder in this today's debate. Why do we say that they are a very important stakeholder? Is because they are because in this part of society, they are the ones who who are facing the most problem, most problem in the society. Why is this so? So when we implement this policy, right, Madam Speaker, they can, because why do we say that our side benefits more on the people on the ground? Because they can only afford local products which are cheap. So this also means that the government fails to fulfill their role as to cater to the all parts of society, right? So the main stance on our side is really like to handle the economic problems systematically, and also the government should cater to the society as best as possible. And with that, I'm more than proud to conclude.
Now, what side government here is trying to paint a picture that depicts that palm oil and all of these cash crops don't really benefit us much, and they can't be sold. For much benefits as well. But we, from closing opposition, will tell you that this is not true. Why? Because these cash crops can't be sold for that much money, then there won't be that much farmers transforming from durian plantations to cash crop plantations such as oil palm. If there is no demand for all of these oil palms, then why would these farmers get the incentives to plant these oil palms? The main premise coming from side opening government is that oil palms are not very important, and we rely on other countries exports, while other countries don't rely on our oil palm exports. No, thank you. But then if the other countries don't rely on our oil palm exports, then how can we earn that much money, and how could the farmers earn that much money on oil palm as well? This is irrelevant in this debate, as we know that there is very much, there is a huge amount of oil palm plantations in Malaysia. And if that you say that oil palms aren't the real need of many countries, then why would these farmers have the incentives at first? Why would our country become such a famous oil palm exporter at first? And that these oil palms are, other than the raw oil palms, we also produce planta. We also produce many other products from oil palms. If you sacrifice this oil palm industry, then you take away all the benefits, or the trickle-down benefits that the inventions of new food products, of new products that we can gain. Now, that is what side opposing government said. They also, the second point that they said is about that countries would push sanctions to other countries, to push sanctions to Malaysia, because so that we can sell cheaper oil palms. Before I continue, yes.
Firstly, stop blatantly lying about people loving our country. Saudi Arabia is the only person that people care about. And secondly, how is our country developing and becoming better if our exchange rate dropping every day?
Okay, so as side opening government said that our prices are going down, but if our currency is going down, the things that we sell has the same value. We're not saying that when our currency drops, the value of the products drops as well. So this is not true. Next on, which countries will provide sanctions when they are people as countries, as the people in their and other countries which want our oil palm products. If they put sanction on us, that means they will have to sacrifice the needs of the public, which is on our oil palm products. That means that it is totally unfair to say that these countries do not want our oil palm products and they can simply put sanctions. If they put these sanctions on our oil palm products, then they could not get the benefit as well. No, thank you. Now, well, coming from closing government, is that they said that, wow, we could have better, we could have more supply on food, but why do we export, why do we import food from our other countries? Because we want to have better life for our people. When they want potatoes, then we import potatoes to our country, not because that we don't have enough rice, so we want to substitute rice in the form of potato. Yeah, moving on to my first argument, which is the extension of opening opposition. They said that this could tarnish, this could ruin our country from a very good oil palm exporter would go down. They had explained pretty well on this, but we'll continue on the harms on this. When our country still stands on image at other people's vision that our country is the one who support oil palm for them, and when every time they buy an oil palm product, they'll remember on our country. They'll know that our country is the one who supplied oil palm for them. That means that they will be gratified for they will feel good for our country as well, and the image of our country from being a country which isn't very stable would be slowly forgotten. Instead, we can glorify ourselves that we are an oil palm supporter, and we think that we can balance off the damage caused by corruption scandals that have been occurring in our country. And if government trades off this image that our country is a very big oil palm supporter, then our country will lose our image and lose out in support of many other countries worldwide. Moving on to my second argument, which is that our economy do rely on oil palm very much. As what side opening government said, said that we can maybe trade off all palms into development of food industries, but think about our oil and gas industries. It's almost the same as oil palm. It is very famous as well, and oil palm is the other one, which is one of our most famous exports as well. And that means that when many people in our country are planting oil palms, then this already proves that oil palm is a very strong economical pillar that supports our country. If we trade off oil palm, it is the same as trading off oil and gas as well. Most of all, oil and gas is going to run out in the future, and as we are already trying our best to develop these oil palm industries, then at the future we can enhance our oil palm industries as well and substitute it to our oil and gas. As we know that our oil and gas industries will one day run out of oil and gas. Therefore, we think that cash crops that were grown in the country could benefit us in the long run. Therefore, let us be great and let them serve.
We believe that it's more important to tackle the main problem in today's status quo, which is the problem of economic importance. We believe that instead of going to the economic problems internationally, it's better to handle the problems within the country itself. In my speech, I'll be giving a few rebuttals and then moving on to my issues and the main comparison in today's debate. Okay. Firstly, a few rebuttals. They misinterpreted our premise by saying that we think that cash crops are not profitable. What we're trying to say is that cash crop might be profitable, but then it is not as important as the amount of food resources in our country. We have to handle the problem of lack of food resources for the citizens first before we move on to the exports in that country. And second of all, you have to understand that sanctions doesn't happen just because a certain country doesn't want to import food to import products from our country. They put up sanctions against a certain country because of other aspects, for example, like government corruptions or humanity violations. So their point on this is very irrelevant. And okay, moving on to the main rebuttal on how they said that Malaysia's economic importance will drop significantly. First of all, we believe that our policy is to gradually decrease. So first of all, Malaysia they would refocus their agriculture from cash crops to food crops, so they can still obtain the profits from food crop because they have already adopted to this change. And also, long run, Malaysia, since they have already conceded that that Malaysia has gained recognition for their export of cash crops. So we believe that this way Malaysia can also develop in their food resources, locally, as well as the exports and imports, which are in a wider scale. Okay, no stop. And also, they didn't respond to our rebuttal on how we said that these countries will face difficulties when they have financial crisis or they face sanctions from other countries. The opening house just said that it's only one country, but we already responded on that by saying that this would eventually lead to more countries. So they failed to address that. And also, we think that they said that the cash crops are a lot more profitable than the food crops, but we think that this is not true, because as my member have already stated that food import and export happens in a bigger scale because of the importance of food, and as well as the requirement of more food by the society. But even if these cash crops are more profitable than the food resources, we believe that it's better to cater to the society, to cater to the society's welfare before thinking of their profit, before thinking about the government's profit. Because as my member have already stated that by having food crops locally, now these poor people are able to access local food that they can actually afford, and also and this is very important, which would be further integrated in my issues. Yes.
Have you ever reached a point where you feel that your welfare is not met because Malaysia is not producing food crops, and you feel that you don't have enough food to eat?
We cannot talk on the perspective of ourselves, because I believe that most of us here come from a decent family. So, but if you look at the perspective of a poor person in Malaysia, they might have faced lots of problems having to buy food. And for example, they can't even afford to buy rice, because there's lots of local rice because there are not much local products, and they have to buy imported products which are much more expensive. Okay, and lastly, on the point of the environment. Okay, firstly, we think that since we gradually decrease the production of cash crops, it wouldn't really affect the environment, because we don't simply burn or chop down trees in a big scale. But even if it does affect the economy, we think that it's we are willing to bite the bullet and say that it is okay, because this doesn't happen. This environmental problem doesn't happen in a really big scale, and even if you are not the country that cause these environmental problems, there are still other countries that might cater to these environmental problems, which will affect globally. Okay, and lastly, okay, firstly, we think that the closing government cater to the most important stakeholders in today's debate, which is the citizens, because the government's obligation is to cater to the welfare of the citizens, and the profit that the government gain are eventually going to help to better the facilities and infrastructures in the country that will help the citizens at the end of the day. And also, if there are poor people who can't afford food, their standard of living will decrease, and therefore the country's GDP will eventually decrease, and the economy of the country will also decrease. So we believe that in today's debate, citizens play the most important role, and we have to cater to them by making local products that are very essential to the citizens, which is food crops, more accessible to them. And if you want to go with the side that handles the most important problem in status quo, go with the closing government. In status quo, since the production of petrol has been decreasing for quite some time, now estates like palm if you want to take cash crops away, how can you survive? How can you stay at the top and be one of the higher ranking countries? Before I start my issue, summing up with the debate, there are not many clashes on both sides because both opening government and closing government were pretty much saying the same thing. And moving on to my issue, that there's only one clash, which is which side helps the country and its people on the ground even more. Yes.
So in the worst case scenario, what would happen under your side if all your countries don't want to sell you food crop because either A, you cannot afford it, or secondly, they want to cut ties with you?
Okay. Sorry, can you repeat?
So in your worst case scenario, what will happen under your side if all these countries they want to sell you food crop because either you couldn't afford it or you want to cut ties or they want to cut ties with you?
Well, if they want to cut ties, it's okay, but about saying you can't afford, that's more on your side because our cash crops, we'll use them to sell and gain more profit. So how can you say that we can't afford it? It's more on under your side. Moving on, the side government was talking about you instead of growing cash crops, you should grow food crops. While under our while my MOO stated that cash crops can also have a benefit and are not entirely useless. Well, they do give benefits. Since the 20th century, the British brought cash crops such as rubber and palm oil into Malaysia. Why? To increase their profit. And even now in status quo, many plantations are being set up. And what is that? People still find it useful. For example, rubber can be made into even your water bottle or erasers, tires. If you're gonna depend on another country just for a rubber, what's the point? You're still gonna either way you're gonna decrease your economy. But even in the before I move on, anything else?
You face more difficulty and import food from other countries or rubber, which is not that essential.
Sorry?
Would you face more difficulty having to import food or rubber that is not as essential?
Sorry, could you repeat? Sorry.
If you think it's more difficult to import food or rubber, which is not as important as food?
Our side they're both easier to import because when we are financially stable, when we have the money, we can import compared to your side who is losing out on the financial terms, and even if you have food crops whatsoever, it won't last for a long term when you need to buy things like rubber or palm oil from other countries just to go on with your daily lives. If you're gonna throw it all away now, then how can the country survive in the long term? In the long term run, yes.
How do you prove to us that when our country is not financially stable, how are we supposed to import products from outside?
Sorry, can
Prove to us on how, if you are saying that our country is having a financial crisis, how are we supposed to import products from outside?
Well, that's exactly what I was saying. I'm saying that if you cut out on cash crops, you will be financially unstable, and therefore you will lose out. It's exactly what I was saying. So if you decide to destroy cash crops, no thank you. You financially lose out. Even if in our worst case scenario that we still need to buy food crops, but why is it better? Well, at least we have money. We can get money from cash crops to buy food crops. But even in status quo where we have food crops, no thank you. Like Kedah being the highest producer of food paddy, but still their quality isn't that good. Or maybe take another example, Cameroon, they have smaller potatoes compared to those in Holland. When we gain the money and the profit from cash crops, we can use that to do research. No thank you. We can use that to do research and how to improve our growth and our grades of food crops, and thus we can, in the long run, we can make it cheaper, which is what side government is trying to achieve. But it also can happen on the outside where we can make it cheaper. Yes.
So, which is more preferable? A country that can sustain on their own because they have their own food crop, or a country that has to depend on other countries and buying and selling?
Sorry?
So, which is more preferable? A country that can sustain on its own because it has its own food crop, or a country that has to depend on other countries buying and selling their products?
Either way, there will be some form where you still need to depend on others. Yes, sure, you can grow certain things, but because of climate, because of the different climates, you can't grow things, plants like apples. You can't grow them in Malaysia, can you? You still have to import them, and if you try to be so independent until you can isolate from them, it will be more likely that they will cut ties under your side. Okay. Just is why you food completely be. With that said, that's why closing opposition has wins, because at least on the outside we help to boost the economy and help the people on the ground, and in the long term we can survive because we are financially stable. And with that, I proudly rest my case.